All right. So this week we're going over motivating employees. Motivating employees has to do more like with the psychology of how people, their needs. You'll see a lot of psychological. If you were to take a psychology class, you would see some of the definitions here. So just to interrupt myself, um, when we're done with the lecture, stay after the end of the lecture with for me. And I could discuss the issues with Pearson just quickly. If one of the issues some people have with Pearson is their browser. So if you're using the Safari or Internet Explorer and you're having issues, sometimes the browser you're using creates some of the issues on Pearson. So I tell students sometimes if you're using Safari because you're on a Mac, try downloading Firefox, Mozilla, or Google Chrome and try accessing Pearson that way. If that's not the issue, if you go to um our Brightspace course, if you physically go to the Brightspace course and in the content section and also in the announcements I posted you could Google it too. Just Google Pearson MyLab customer service number. You can either chat with someone or talk to someone by phone. They can even go into your computer and see what's wrong, and they can fix any Pearson issue you're having. So if it's a technical issue with Pearson, uh, see if the browser's the issue. If you're still having issues, call them and contact them because that's the best way to take care of that. Assuming you're logged in and have an account and everything set up, um, they can help you debug any technical issues. All right, so back to our coursework here for employees. You'll see that some of the examples are actually psychology based. So that means that psychology overlaps with business because you're using certain psychological understandings to understand how you keep people motivated, you keep people satisfied, and for employees, right? Because if your employees are unhappy, it's going to be a problem, right? And then what if your boss, your manager, their style is not suitable to the employees or just employees aren't working together properly. There's conflicts between employees. Personality dynamics are a big deal when it comes to the workforce. So understanding that's an important part of business, right? It's not so much about people being happy, so much it is motivating people, right? Some people are not motivated because they want to be happy. Some people are motivated by reward, profits. They can be motivated by accolades, recognition. Some people are not motivated by that. They're motivated by different things. So if you're trying to motivate people for money and accolades, they that might not be what drives them. Someone else might be motivated because they like the type of work they do. They like helping people. They like something of that sort, and that's their motivation. So if you have different employees who are motivated by different things in the workforce in job setting, how do you motivate them? What environmental factors are important? What if someone's not competitive? Do they need competition to motivate them? What if someone's highly competitive? Do they care about the well-being of the other employees, or they only care about beating people and feeling better, feeling superior in those regards of competition? You know, what do you do? So we don't know the best solution, but what we are going to explore is sort of the methodologies, the analysis ways to identify things, and that's sort of where you make the decision, right? So there's intrinsic and extrinsic rewards, right? Intrinsic is what you feel inside, so pride in your performance, sense of achievement. Extrinsic is, your pay, your promotion, your praise. Scientific method studies workers to find the most efficient way of doing things and then teaching people those techniques. So the question is, do you feel that particularly so the thing is that, these methods, they're not necessarily new methods. Um, these are methods that have been around for a while. These are scientific observations that have been around for a while. So in this case, three key elements to increase productivity are time, methods of work, and rules of work. A lot of this is more psychological based. Some of it is also based upon the type of work that was being done, right? You had less automated work, you had more manual labor. And that's important, right? Because the studies that they did on efficiency was based upon manual labor jobs. Now we have a lot of automated jobs, we have technical jobs. They're different, right? So some of these observations still hold true, but their focus may be on types of labor that are outdated, essentially, if that makes sense. So, like time motion studies is a good example where studies of which tasks must be performed to complete a job and the time needed to do each task. If you're doing a manual labor job on a conveyor belt or something, this has relevance, right? If you're in front of a computer answering emails, I think there's still sort of the time needed to do each task, but it's unique, right? If you get forwarded an email that's complicated or a situation that requires more technical problem solving, calling different people, how long is that going to take? You don't know. So, and it's not a time motion thing, right? It's not taking a thing, grabbing it, putting it here, pulling this, it's not a manual labor thing. So the theory of it can still sort of be true in terms of what you're looking at, observing, what you're trying to measure, the measurement, right? But it's a little outdated in terms of the time dash motion, right? Unless you're doing that type of job, this manual labor jobs are still very much relevant. Some jobs require manual labor, right? I'm sitting in an apartment or a house. It didn't get built by machines. People with, you know, uh, ingenuity and technical skills and architectural skills and building skills built this home. Uh, Time motion study could apply, right? Even though it may not be a rudimentary task to build it, right? We're not doing the same repetitive task over and over. Uh, it's very much relevant. So even though we have more automation, manual labor is still super important because we need it, right? So there's still relevance. So these are a lot of these individuals, you would see their names on the exams. There's the type of study and their theory and the definition. So Elton Mayo and the Hawthorne studies, researchers studied worker efficiency under different levels of light. Productivity increased regardless of light condition. Researchers decided it was human or psychological factors at play. The Hawthorne effect is the tendency of people to act differently when they are being studied. when they know they're being studied, which we know is true, right? If your boss is around, you act differently versus if they're not around. That's just the way it is. If people are under observation, they act differently because they're aware they're under observation. The interesting thing about the different levels of light, though, uh, maybe they're looking at productivity, but poor lighting conditions actually affects your eyesight. So the more natural light you have, the better it is for your eyesight. This has nothing to do with the value of motion study. This is just, understanding about safe and effective work environments. They found students who had more natural light, their eyes degraded less over time versus students who didn't have natural light. They had artificial light. They had more eye issues uh, over time. So I would argue that levels of light are important, but particularly natural light is very important for our eyesight, for our health and well-being. So, uh, saying let's put some people in a box and they should work just as effectively, the human body doesn't work that way. The vitamin D is a requirement for your metabolic function, for calcium production, for everything. So production, I should say, which is calcium. So there's definitely like a lack of scientific understanding and knowledge about the human body in regards to these studies. They're just purely observational from a productivity standpoint. But I don't know how productive you could be if your body's not functioning properly because you're denying it certain basic things it needs to function, like natural light. So, say as it may be, uh, I do think it matters, right? Because if you especially I believe it's in Chinese culture was what's the terminology 969 or 996 or something like that, like not you work 6 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I think the word that phrase was coined by some billionaire guy from China about uh work culture. Let me see if I can find it to give you the exact. I feel like I've referenced this before, but here we go. 996 work culture. It says 996 is a work culture in China's tech and startup sectors that refers to working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week, totaling 72 hours. It's illegal and violates Chinese labor laws, which limits work to 44 hours per week. While not officially sanctioned, many companies practice it to cut costs and speed up development. This is more of a startup thing. But the point is, though, is that the reason why I referenced that 996 culture, they have you locked in a box for literally 72 hours a week, denying you sunlight, it will have an effect on you psychologically. It's physically having an effect on your body. All right. Lack of sunlight has a physical effect on your body. So, light actually is important. You know, what do they say? Touch grass. Go touch some grass. Go get some sunlight. 10, 15 minutes here and there. You wake up in the morning, stand in front of the sun for 10, 15 minutes. It does something to your body, right? If you live in an area where, uh, like you live near the equator, where it's really hot and the sun can actually be harmful to you, then you limit your sunlight exposure, but you still need sunlight. Your body physically needs sunlight. Some people maybe need more of it, some people less. You could literally go to your doctor during the winter, especially if you have someone more melanin, darker skin, browner skin. You go to the doctor, they do blood work, they'll tell you your vitamin D levels. D is in delta, vitamin D. They'll tell you what they are. Most New Yorkers, especially during the winter, there's no sun, there's less sunlight, it's cold, you're indoors more. People have low vitamin D levels and they get the winter blues. Creates, people start to feel depressed or have more psychological issues. So there's a direct correlation between sunlight, and well-being. Like you could physically test your blood and see you need more sunlight. You know, Uh, People with darker skin and melanin are just kind of built for the sun because their skin is darker to be more resilient against it. Uh, so by no means are you supposed to be trapped inside a box for 72 hours doing some repetitive task. It's just not the way the human body is designed to work. The function of the human body is anti-humanity. Okay. So anyway, I know rich people, they're so hungry and eager for you to make them money and you become their slave, but the human body has needs and they have to respect that. It's just that simple. Okay. So, maybe the windows need to open up or the ceiling comes undone and you get some light and you work 72 hours. But, you have to respect the human body. Okay? It's been around before you agreed. It's been around for a while, but people don't seem to care. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, theory of motivation based on unmet human needs. So this is the psychology aspect I was talking about, from basic physical to safety to social, esteem needs to self-actualization, so on and so forth. So really what it's saying is that Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that you have this hierarchy of things that you need psychologically. All right. From the highest to the lowest. So the bottom pillar of the pyramid, sorry, the bottom of the pyramid is your psychological needs. It's bigger, broader, more basic, right? So that's the base of the pyramid. And it kind of goes up to self-actualization. So safety, social, esteem. It's telling you what a person needs based on ideas of motivation. So if you provide these needs to people, or if these needs are being met in some way as part of the workforce or your employees, you'll have a more motivated person, right? So there's safety needs, there's social needs, there's esteem needs, there's psychological needs. The psychological needs being more, I would say, right. So here's an example, right? So you have Maslow and Herzberg. So Herzberg is actually um, Frederick Herzberg talks about motivators, job factors that cause employers to be productive and then give them satisfaction. And hygiene factors are job factors that can cause dissatisfaction, right? So you could take Herzberg and Maslow and you can kind of stack them up and you can see a comparison between the two, all right? So you see here, Maslow has psychological bottom going all the way up to self-actualization. So think about safety, right? If you're in an environment that doesn't feel safe, that's going to impact you. So that's sort of the near the bottom, your basic physical well-beings, right? I need to physically feel well. I need to psychologically be well. If I'm having depression, anxiety, psychological issues, if my job is giving me psychological issues, is a problem. Then there's the safety issues. Then there's social. So it kind of goes in order of what Maslow believes you need more first, right? I need to feel my brain needs to be working. I need to have physical safety, right? This is the bottom base level things. Then I can, have the sociality of socializing with others. Then I can kind of self-actualize about my self-esteem, my character, my personality, things of that sort. So you kind of go from the bottom of basic needs up to more higher needs. And Herzberg is sort of breaking down the difference between motivational and hygiene, right? So hygiene, which he says, just to sort of go over, are maintenance factors. These are factors can cause dissatisfaction, but changing them have little effect on motivation. So hygiene factors are usually like basic things that are almost like comparable to Maslow, like the base level things. And the higher level things are actually what affects motivation, right? So you got to have these base level things. And then when you want to motivate people, you're focusing more on the motivational, the high level stuff. So the example they give here is, the hygiene factors are going to be your salary, your personal life, company policy, job security, work conditions, and then social is going to be interpersonal relationships, subordinates, peers, things like that, the people you work with, your relationships, right? So these are not things that affect motivation, but these are, as you can see here, these factors can cause dissatisfaction, but improving it doesn't change motivation. So you definitely need these things, but then when you're trying to elevate your employee to enhance their motivation, you're looking at these higher level things, right? Advancement, recognition, status, the work itself, the achievement, the possibility of growth. And I'd say this is these two models tend to stand the test of time in terms of employee engagement, uh, understanding, how people feel about themselves, what drives people in terms of their job. Uh, you could have someone make 150,000 a year, and you can double their salary. Surely they'll be happy, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be motivated, right? And it's kind of true in terms of observation of people that motivation is more of these areas, right? Although I would argue that people will be intrinsically motivated initially on the onset by an increase in salary because it also affects your lifestyle, right? And in many cases, the salary can be seen as part of advancement, recognition, and status, and also growth, which are the higher areas of motivation. So it's tied to it, but it's how you tie it to it, right? So anyway, I would say these pillars are important because they are functional in terms of motivation and employees' well-being in the workplace. Okay. So you have theory XY. This is with managers' attitudes fall into either an X or a Y. What's the difference, right? X is that workers dislike work. I would say X is more of a pessimistic standpoint. Workers prefer to be directed and avoid responsibility. Y is that people like to work as part of life. Workers seek goals. It's almost like one is a very negative outlook, which is X, and theory Y is a more positive outlook. People seek responsibility. It has to do with the personality too. I think some people take jobs and they feel like theory X, right? Because they don't like their job. It's a job. It's the only job they can get. It's the only job they feel they can manage. Maybe they have some sort of job security with it. They just need to pay the bills. So you do get people that are like this sometimes because they hate their job, right? Because they're not fulfilling those Maslow hierarchy of needs. And you do get people who feel more like theory Y in terms of the type of work they're searching for, the type of lifestyle they're searching for. Theory Y definitely seems more rational, logical in terms of the human experience, but that's not always. Survival is very different, right? So if you have a job that's there for survival, you may find theory X could be more relevant, right? In terms of the way people are. And there's a personality characteristic to it too. Different people feel and think and behave and respond different ways. So while I'm saying theory X seems more negative, it warrants review and understanding because sometimes people respond differently to different things, right? Some people respond differently to the threat of punishment, being coerced or controlled, than they do being motivated, right? Okay. So it depends. Workers prefer to be directed and avoid responsibility. Some people don't like responsibility. I met people, they say, I don't want to be manager. I don't want to lead people. I just want to do my job. Depends on the person, right? And then fear and punishment. my 2 cents, right? This is not a McGregor theory. This is my 2 cents. My 2 cents. Primary motivators are fear and punishment. Um, Fear and punishment only work effectively if the person you're trying to motivate or the employee is adversarial to you. Okay? So what does that mean, adversarial? That means that they're not with you or working with you because they're committed to the company's goals. They don't share the mission statement. They don't share the value of the company. They don't really care about the employees, the people they serve. They don't take value and pleasure in helping others. The more adversarial the person's desires are, or antagonistic their desires are against or not in favor of the company, the more you see Theory X come into fruition as motivating stuff, a way of motivating. Unfortunately, right? It was a friendly way of saying it is that if you're not a good fit for the company's goals, objectives, mission statement, if they don't see value and they take pleasure in the work or see value in the work they do, then the ability to motivate them that way decreases. And then the only other way, the only option then becomes theory X, right? Fear and punishment. So if you were it's gonna sound strange, right? But if you were in a battle, fighting your enemies in a battle, right? Like a war, and you got a kingdom and you're defending your kingdom against threats from all angles, and it's an active war setting, how would you motivate your enemies, right? You would motivate them through control, force, threat of punishment, fear, because they're your enemies, they're your adversaries. So Theory X plays more the more adversarial, whomever is strategically whomever you are utilizing to strategically achieve your company's goals, the more adversarial they are, the more effective Theory X is. The less adversarial they are, the more effective Theory Y is. Okay. So that's my professional assessment on it. Okay. So if you have to do Theory X, maybe they shouldn't be your employee. That's the way I put it. But things happen though. And then some people, they just have certain personality types. It's just what it is. That you just, and some jobs, people take jobs as to take jobs. They don't care about the employees. They don't love the job. It's just pay a paycheck. And unfortunately, they may not respond so well to some of the higher end areas of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it could be a job that's like a revolving door. Like if you work at McDonald's, people take summer jobs, they work at McDonald's, they're high schooler or something, or they're in college, and they're just taking a job just to make some money. McDonald's knows that a lot of his workforce in the franchises, the actual locations is, they're not necessarily permanent workforce. So they understand that, right? I don't think McDonald's uses Theory X to manage their employees, right? Uh, but the point I'm making is that sometimes people's motivations for why they're there kind of puts them in this box sometimes, the Theory X box, because they may not necessarily be aligned with the goals of the company. They're aligned with their own goals, but you wouldn't know that necessarily, right? So anyway, moving on. Uh, so there's this theory X, Y, and Z. Employees dislike work, which is X. Theory Y, we spoke on natural employees view work as a natural part of life, and there's theory Z, where employee involvement is the key to increase productivity. Employee control is implied and informal. Employees prefer to share responsibility in decision making. Employees perform better in environments that foster trust and a cooler operation. Employees need guaranteed employment and will accept slow evaluations and promotions. So this is the theory Z. I'd say all these theories have value. It's just understanding the conditions of the situation, right? So that's how I put that. All right. So expectancy theory. Can I accomplish the task? Yes or no, right? So can I accomplish the task? If it's no, then I'm not motivated. If can I accomplish the task? Yes, then what's the outcome? Is the reward worth it? Yes, then I'm motivated. If no, then it's not motivated. So this is almost kind of basic if you think about it, but it's so sometimes the basic stuff makes sense, right? If I can do a task and I can get a reward from it, then I might be motivated to do it. If I can't do the task, then I can't do it. So this is just I'm not motivated. I can't do that task. If I could do the task, but then there's no reward, I don't want to do it. All right. So this is what it's saying. Uh, the amount of effort employees exert on a task depends on their expectations of the outcome, right? So I think outcome might be better than the word reward because outcome is just what the expected outcome is going to be. It could be a reward, it could be something bad, right? Who knows? But in this case, they're using reward, but I think outcome is a better definition of the situation. All right. So putting theories into action. So we've looked at different theories. So motivating through open communication, which is important, right? Creating a culture that rewards listening, train managers to listen, use effective questioning techniques. This is important too, right? Sometimes if you don't know how to ask a question, you can't get the answer you want or the information you're looking for. Some people don't know how to explain themselves, can't get into detail, have a hard time really expanding on what they want to say, or they understand something, but they can't even begin to really explain it. And asking questions, the what, where, when, why, the W questions helps expand on information. All right. It's an effective method for problem solving. The W questions, uh, it helps with communication. Some people are not effective communicators. Talking a lot is not necessarily effective communication skills. Being quiet is obviously not effective either. Is getting information in and out and understanding each other, right? So removing barriers to open communication, avoid vague and ambiguous communication, right? Easy to make it to communicate, ask employees what's important to them. All this is important, right? In our last class, we went over the hierarchy of management, and one of the things I discussed was communication and that flow of information and knowledge flowing between the top brass down and up. And as you can see, also when it comes to putting these theories into action, communication is being seen as an effective motivator, but is really also just effective period in any type of organization because you have to communicate. You're the one doing the job or experiencing the experience. Other people are a part of your journey. They're part of the workforce. They're a part of the job itself. You have to communicate what you're experiencing. Sometimes we don't want to communicate because of theory X. We're afraid of punishment. That's where theory X kind of creates a problem, right? Where maybe you're too punitive and you start to impede on communication, right? So moving on, right? So applying open communication as self-managed teams, respect workers, provide interesting work, develop worker skills, allow autonomy, decentralize authority, reward good work. This is completely dependent upon the job, the structure, the task, the goals. Uh, you know, you can't say this is what's best. It depends on the nature of the work, right? Recognize a job well done, so recognition is important, right? Uh, it's important to understand that if you recognize someone, job well done, but then there's all these other measurements in place that are very contradictory to that, it doesn't work, right? So there has to be like an organic sense in the community or the culture of the organization whereby there's a sense of recognition. It can't be like a fake thing that they read or saw or some uh analyst group or some sort of, HR group said, "Oh, you should incorporate recognizing your employees because it helps motivate them." And then they start to put recognition methodologies in their structure, their compensation, but then the company itself is just doing it to try to do it because they're being told to do it versus it being an organic part of the processes of their culture, of the work way. Then it feels forced. And the employees will say this is BS. Okay. So and the other thing is this also, you don't want to foster unhealthy competition either, right? So it's something where uh we're not kumbaya singing hands, we're holding hands, singing, holding hands. There's a goal of mission of what you're trying to achieve, but recognizing people as a job well done helps to appease their emotional factor of motivating them. Uh, it's kind of like the 996 I just explained or gave the example. If you're locking people in a room and making them work 996, this is an example, and you say, "Oh, good job, well done," right? No breaks, but good job. That's not really recognition, right? So the recognition has to really be genuine. All right, it can't be forced, and it has to match the culture. The positivity of the recognition has to match the positivity of the culture. All right, if the culture isn't positive, recognition isn't positive, right? And then, recognition can backfire if you don't do it right, because then you can create adversaries in your company, you create jealousy, you can create unhealthy, you can foster unhealthy competition versus healthy competition. You have to do it correctly, right? You have to understand the type of job, the work goals, the employees. If you're hiring people whose personality types are not competitive, don't create competition. It's that simple, right? If you're in a job setting where it's a sales position where people have to compete and sell and they get paid commission, then competition works in that environment, right? And recognition and more sales goals and more commissions for more sales, that makes sense, right? Is recognition. But if your workers can't actually achieve those goals because you're not providing support and structure for it, and you're gaslighting employees in some cases, uh, then it doesn't matter, right? It's fluff. It doesn't matter. So there has to be synergies to recognition and motivation. It has to be organic. It has to make sense. You don't want to put things in place that are motivating, but they're actually demotivating. You don't want to create conflict. So you have to really look at all these different goals, the company. You have to look at the culture, the job itself, or the jobs within the company, because different jobs, if you're working in HR, it's different than working in sales, right? If you're selling stuff, it's not the same as HR, right? So what motivates an HR person is not the same as going to motivate a salesperson. So it's important to understand that, right? Uh, And there's this one's talking about cultural differences, right? High context. Cultures require relationships and groups trust before performance, and low context cultures believe relationship building distracts from task. So is understand the cultural context of all this because we didn't discuss cultural context, right? Because your cultural context is going to really much affect your perspectives, your beliefs, your motivators, what motivates you, your values, which affects your perception, which is going to affect all those psychological factors and motivating factors. So it's just sort of touching base and discussing that. Um, right. So they're saying, here baby boomers prefer meetings and conference calls. Gen Xers prefer emails and will choose meetings only if they have no other options. Millennials prefer to use technology to communicate, particularly through social media. And Gen Zers prefer face-to-face meetings and shy away from phone calls, which is interesting, right? So if you're, taking consideration who your staff is, your age demographic, taking consideration also uh, the culture you're working with, Americans, what culture they are, how this affects people. Okay, so we are done with our lecture. If you guys have any other questions, I will hang out on the call for a little bit. You can ask me those questions. As for our chat group, I think you need to contact customer service for Pearson. Just Google Pearson MyLab customer service. It'll bring you right to the web page. If you can't talk to someone on the phone, you could do a little chat session with them. They're super good. I think they're available 7 days a week. That's what that's what I would recommend. As for your assignments, also, if you haven't completed them because you're having technical issues, they're still available and open to complete. All right, guys, I'm going to stop recording. If you have any questions, just I'll hang on here for a little bit.